What's up, pals? Host of the Riverdale Review, Pete and Bessie, here to let you guys know about a little technical issue we had on this episode. Unfortunately, during the last 20 minutes or so of the episode, there are a few little audio hiccups, in my audio specifically, every few minutes where my audio will skip, and I become a little hard to understand, but the context of the conversation does carry through. We had a great episode with a great guest this week that we were unfortunately not able to reshoot, so we didn't want to scrap the whole episode for what amounts to about 20 seconds of messed up audio. So hopefully you guys can bear with us, and we'll have it figured out by next week. Thank you guys so much, and enjoy this episode of the Riverdale Review. Live from the booth at Pops, it's time for the Riverdale Review! What's up, Internet? Welcome back to episode 2 of the Riverdale Review, the Pals weekly Riverdale Review podcast, which I guess you could tell from the title. So I want to introduce our guest this week, Miss Olivia Hicks, who's a friend of the show, friend of Kale's. So Olivia, why don't you just real quick for the people at home, tell them what you do and why you're here today.
Hi, I'm Olivia. I'm in Dundee at the moment. I'm a comics PhD student, and I study British and American girls comics and look at superheroes in them. And I've been trying to get Archie into it for ages, so this is a dream come true for me to be able to talk about Archie.
Well, we're really excited to have you here. So, what is your relationship with Riverdale? Like, did you get on right at the beginning? Did you catch it over the summer like a lot of people on Netflix? What's your deal with the show?
I was a Riverdale hipster, so I missed the sort of opening panel, but like I was kind of following the news of it being announced, and every new thing they were announcing, I was loving it more and more. Like they were like very early on, they were like, "Oh, Archie's going to be going out with Grundy," and I was like, "That's terrible! I love it!" And so I was, so the day after it kind of came out in the US, I was like watching it it came out basically much this next day on the UK Netflix for us. So in the UK, if you were into Archie, you could basically watch it from the beginning at the same time.
Oh, that's awesome.
From like episode 1, I've been watching it a day after everybody else in the US, and it's just been brilliant, and I'm so glad it's kicked off in the way it has.
So, so you were a fan of Archie before Riverdale?
Yes, I was, but not for probably that long before Riverdale. Maybe about a year and a half I've been reading all the Archie titles.
So did you get into it with the new Riverdale stuff when they relaunched in 2015?
Yeah, yes, no, probably a little bit before that with the actual Afterlife of Archie, and then I was like ran to the comic shop the day the new Archie title came out to see if I could get it, and they didn't have it, so I had to wait for the trades, and because of that one annoying guy not having the comic in, I've always been behind on the trades with Archie, but it's worth waiting for. It's really good stuff.
Cool. All right, so before we get into our spoiler-free thoughts on episode 15 this week, I did want to just thank you guys for tuning in last week and making this show a success. We did end up getting a good amount of listenership, so we're really thankful for you guys for tuning in. Thank you so much for wanting to hear us gab about Riverdale. So yeah, remember, we'd love to hear from you. If you guys want to let us know your thoughts on Riverdale, you can write to us at thecomicspals@gmail.com. You can get us on social media at thecomicspals, and support us on your platform of choice. You know, if you're an audio listener, like us on your platform of choice. If you're on YouTube, please like, share with your friends, subscribe, all that stuff. We'd greatly appreciate it. So, before we get into all that, I did have some context from last week's show that I wanted to throw in here. So, it's just a little bit of news about Riverdale. The Hollywood Reporter is reporting that Riverdale earned series high returns for season 2, episode 1. So it had a 0.8 rating among adults 18 to 49, which is kind of like the prime demographic, and then had 2.3 million viewers, which was the CW's most watched telecast among teenagers since The Vampire Diaries hit its peak back in like 2012. So yeah, so this is like a really, really big win for Riverdale. The growth is being attributed to high numbers online because they put basically the entire thing for you to be able to watch online after the fact. And then, as I kind of said before, the show's massive second life that it found on Netflix, especially in the States. So that it definitely seems like season 2's off to a strong start here. And here's hoping that it keeps that momentum because we're definitely enjoying it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome to hear. And I guess pretty interesting that that's how sort of it like worked out. It's rating that much higher because of the decision to put them out like the day after, you know, online. I mean, a lot of TV shows are doing it now. I know South Park does it. I follow South Park. So like, yeah, it's just a smart move.
Yeah, it's just interesting because a lot of times it seems to be like that's on Hulu. You know, it's like South Park kind of started doing that like years ago. And was kind of a trailblazer in that way of putting your content online for free. But this is one of the first examples we have in like recent memory of a show like finding a second life online that actually translated into people tuning in to watch it on television. Because another great example is like Crazy Ex-Girlfriend is another network show that has not done great in ratings but has such a strong cult following and does really well on Netflix, so they keep renewing it, but it hasn't necessarily translated to more people actually tuning in to watch the show, which is the case for Riverdale, so that's great. And I guess it speaks to how activated the fan base seems to be around it.
I'm such a proud mama hearing all of that news. I'm just like, you go, girl.
Yeah, right? It's like, thank God. I love to see a show that I love actually performing well.
Yeah.
So let's give our spoiler-free impressions. Olivia, since you're our guest, why don't you kick it off? What did you think of episode, what is this, 15, right?
15.
Yeah, 15. What did you think about it?
It was amazing. I was watching it and I had my headphones in, so people were in the room and they could just hear my reactions to the episode. And it was just me screaming, oh my gosh, oh my goodness. And then like my legs would be kicking and I was like, the whole time. It was an absolutely brilliant episode. I felt last episode wasn't that great a Riverdale episode, so I feel like this one we're right back in the thick of it.
Oh wow, you didn't like the premiere?
I felt like I liked it, but I felt it was like a bit of a filler episode. I felt like not a lot really happened, and for Riverdale, I'm kind of used to like 16 different things happening in an episode. So I felt like this felt much more like Riverdale, back in the Riverdale swing of things, whereas last episode was a bit more slow and introductory, I felt.
I mean, this episode was definitely a lot meatier. And we were definitely big fans of last week's show as well. But I mean, just for like anecdotal context, like for last week's show, I had a page of notes going into the episode. For this one, I have 3 pages. Whoa. So yeah, this was a meaty episode. So what about you, Marco? What did you think?
Yeah, I loved it. It was great. So I usually catch these, I try to catch these on the train on my way home. And so like I saw the first 5 minutes before the internet cut out finally. And that train ride home was so long. I was craving, for that like hour. And it was awesome. It was really, really good. Some of those little twists and turns were not expected. Sort of seeing how other characters were introduced, other characters that I know from like the comics. So that was cool to see. You know, you get to see like more of that cast from the Archie books. And yeah, overall, I am pumped for the next episode to see where this crazy story is leading us.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you there. I also thought the episode was great, and I think that has been the real success of Riverdale all along. But I think it's already off to a good start this season, which is that like the overall plot, like the overall arc, as it were, is really interesting and engaging in that like murder mystery in season 1 and the, kind of, I'm assuming you watched episode 1 at this point, right? So I can spoil that. The, mystery of who is behind this new string of attacks in Riverdale, right? That is engaging enough to keep you going. But I think what really makes me, what makes Riverdale resonate with me, is that there are so many smaller human stories going on all the time with like pretty much every other character that like they do a really good job of balancing, like there are still a few supporting characters who we really haven't gotten much from this season, most notably probably Kevin. But the fact that like each character has their own arc that's going on that's completely independent of everyone else, at least to some degree usually, is something that I think really keeps me engaged, just because there's always something to be there's always a thread to be pulling at, and I think that's really to the show's benefit. So any other final thoughts before we move into the spoiler full section?
I had like a page of notes, but it just kind of descended into emojis. That's what Riverdale does to me. Like in a teenage girl.
You just hit a point where you're just like, I in my notes, I have like a bunch of things where it's just like, just a few words and a heart,
I did hearts. I descended into hearts because one of my ships was very strong this episode. I just descended into drawing hearts around their name.
Well, without spoiling what happened, who is that ship?
It's Shirozi, which is it's not a real ship, but it's like Cheryl and Josie. Okay. The chemistry was very strong this episode, and I was quite happy.
Yeah, no, I totally see that. All right, well, so we'll get into more of that in the spoiler full section. So if you haven't seen episode 2 yet, or episode 15, I guess, I don't know how we want to discuss these, but now would be the time to jump out if you're a person who's worried about spoilers. If you don't mind having it spoiled and you want to emotionally prepare for the episode, stick around. We hope that you'll come back and check it out after you've watched the episode if you haven't already. If not, we'll see you next week. So... this episode is largely centered on the fight to keep Pops open, right? Which I think kind of played into one of the larger themes of Riverdale as a whole that we saw a lot in season 1, which is kind of the realities of the present corrupting elements of the past, or like the idealized view of the past. And I think, you know, Jughead calls Pops the latest casualty in this war that Riverdale's been kind of going through since, you know, the beginning of season 1. But thanks to Betty's efforts, Pops is going to be open for business, for better or worse. Which we'll get into in a minute. But I did want to start off our conversation this week by kind of talking about Betty. So on last week's show, we talked about how we didn't really feel like Betty had too much to do in episode 1. She was definitely kind of playing supporting player to all the people in her life. But this time around, as Cheryl called her, she was very much kind of a stone cold bitch, and I was all about it. What did you guys think about Betty's, you know, what Betty had to do this episode?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so like they kind of were teasing at the sort of San Diego panel that we were going to get more Dark Betty. I think we all thought this was going to happen. But Dark Betty in kind of season 1 was very much Betty losing control. And I think what was so kind of great about this episode was Dark Betty. It was like Dark Betty was being harnessed, but Betty was still very much in control, and that kind of gave her a bit more depth to the character. It wasn't that she like kind of loses control and this kind of other element of her comes out. This is like she knows how to harness the bad girl within her to get what she wants. And that was like more terrifying, more exciting. Like, go Betty.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my one concern with it was like I had this moment where I was like, "Ooh, you're certainly your mother's daughter." And it's just like, I do not like Alice Cooper, but...
This is one of the main reasons... Okay, so this is one of the things I heard you guys talking about last week. I was like, oh, we're going to fight about this. Alice Cooper is amazing. And I love Alice Cooper.
No! What?
Team Alice
Olivia!
all the way.
She's such a monster!
I love monsters. I love monsters.
No!
Monstrous characters. I just love her so much. I think, like, just, she's so crazy at the beginning, but she kind of becomes this really sympathetic character with sort of Hal. And, like, you kind of just get to the stage where she's being awful, but you're just cheering her on. You're like, yeah, go, be meaner.
I am not!
I was loving every moment of this episode. Every time she took out her camera and was photographing stuff and being like a biatch, I was so
She's so nosy. Yeah, no, I will say she seems like she's a damn good journalist, at least.
Yeah.
Not always the most ethical, but she's certainly good at her job.
I don't know if you guys kind of picked this up at the end of the last season, but it kind of was like the final season kind of ended with everyone sort of having this choice of whether or not they were going to become like their parents. And it definitely seemed like Betty was going to become like Alice, and that Jughead was becoming like FP, and that sort of Veronica was kind of rebelling and trying to be different and trying not to become her parents. But that was kind of the struggle that was set up sort of emotionally at the end of season 1. And I felt like Betty's just giving in. She's just, I'm going to become Alice.
Yeah, at least to a degree. And I think like maybe to speak to what you said, right? Like I feel like hopefully it's her like harnessing that side of her and not succumbing to it, you know?
The dark side of the Coopers.
Yeah, which there certainly is no shortage of that.
Man, that notion just makes me sad.
Oh no, go ahead.
I can't see my sweet Betty becoming that monster.
I don't know, man. We definitely saw another side of Betty tonight, or I guess last night.
Great.
But I don't know. I was all about it. Like, it's concerning, but she got work done, man. I mean, she blackmails Cheryl. She lies to the Pussycats to get them to perform and save Pops. It's like she's basically like the patron saint of Pops' chocolate shop.
I think, what is it? The patron saint of lost causes, Alice called her. It was great. Yeah. And also, how much did you guys love that scene where Cheryl was in that ridiculous lingerie in like the school changing rooms and Betty comes in to confront her? And that was one of the moments that started me screaming. I was like so into it.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Olivia, because I had a little section about that when we get to Cheryl's part, but let's talk about it right now. I like fan service as a thing is a thing I don't like. It's a thing like I've said to Marco is like why I have trouble getting into anime for whatever reason in this show. It works for me. Like it's just the right amount of trashy for stuff like that.
It works the same way in anime.
I don't know. I can't justify why I feel the way I do about Riverdale, but like it just works for me.
Okay.
You know, it just does.
I think there's a bit where Cheryl says something about like, oh, you're kind of being mean. And Betty goes, no, we're just having a fun girl talk. And my note is just the sound of 1,000 fan fictions being written.
Yes, absolutely. Please, anybody, please send in your fanfic. We will accept it at thecomicspals@gmail.com, please.
We will read it live on the air.
We will read it live. We'll enact it.
I'll 1,000% do that. I'm not even kidding.
I'm Betty.
I think what's kind of great is that Riverdale was always very referential to like its influences and very much sort of into bringing up pop culture references. And now that it's had like a whole season of fan sort of reactions, it's now starting to get a little bit meta, I feel. And I feel like it's going to get maybe more commenting on sort of like some of the fan sort of theories and stuff. There was a bit, I mean, maybe this is just me being like super with my microscope. There's a bit where sort of Cheryl refers to Betty and Jughead being like as being chimpanzees picking off lice, and obviously lice is is what you call Bughead if you don't like Bughead. So I'm like, they're gonna keep getting more and more meta is my prediction for Riverdale season 2.
That's a really good point. Whoa, that's blowing my mind for a sec.
I mean, I love that sort of thing. Like this show is dripping with Easter eggs and little nods to stuff like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if you're right. So to take it back to what's going on with Betty, like, unfortunately, it seems like her best intentions have kind of paved the way for a seedier element to move into Riverdale, as Hiram Lodge, secretly buys the property. So, you know, where do we think this is leading? Like, what do we think Hiram's motive is, buying Veronica's love, or if there is one?
You mean his motives, like, as entering the town, or his motives with Veronica?
Either or, if you have thoughts on either. Like, I mean, I would assume that, like, ostensibly, right, like, visually, he's making this purchase to make it seem as though he's doing something for Veronica, right, to mend fences. But given the fact that he lies about it and that they buy it, I would imagine that he has some ulterior motive there, in the same way that he's been buying up property all around the town.
I feel like the secret villain of Riverdale is going to be revealed to be like gentrification in about 6 seasons time. They're going to be like, because it's about how like, you know, Pop was fighting off the coffee chain, sort of a liquor store chain, take it out. Like, I feel like secretly, like, Hiram's just going to start building condos everywhere.
It was Whole Foods all along.
Honestly, I don't know that that's far off, because like I said, that seems to be one of the major themes of the show, right? Is old versus new, or I guess new versus old, and most of the new things in town definitely seem to be almost as problematic as all the old, you know, stuff that is wrong with the town. So I definitely think that that's going to probably continue to be one of the themes that we play with as the season progresses.
I kind of want to know why Mayor McCoy kind of hates everything in Riverdale. Like, every time Betty's like, we should save it because history, Mayor McCoy's like, I hate history, and just kind of tries to burn everything to the ground. I'm like, I'm not quite sure where she's at yet. Like, I kind of like Mayor McCoy, but I kind of want more development to her particular shade of evil.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny. While we're referencing like funny things we wrote in our notes, I wrote Mayor McCoy turning her back since 2017.
That's good.
But also, I did feel for her because I was just like, a woman can't even walk to her office without random teenagers accosting her. Like, one thing was Pops. I felt Pops was okay. I was like, that's a landmark. I understand that. But Jughead being like, oh, by the way, get my dad off this murder charge or like accessory to murder charge. I'm like, that's not really the mayor's sort of provision. Like, that's sort of abuse of power.
Yeah, right. And especially because she's like, what is this, an ambush? Like, or is this just like ask Mayor McCoy for every ridiculous thing you can think of right now? But yeah, I agree. I liked her character a lot in season 1. I thought she was pretty complicated. I thought her relationship with Josie was interesting, and I hope we get some more of that this season.
Yeah, that was a cool.
Definitely, whatever. Sorry.
No, I was just saying. Yeah, it was a cool relationship that I like to explore more. I felt for Josie that first season.
I get the sense that Josie's going to be a more relevant character this season. Like, I forget the actress. I forget the actress who plays her, but she seems to be pictured in all of the like main cast photos, along with like, you know, the 4 actual main characters and Kevin. Mm-hmm. So, you know,
and Kevin.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like Kevin, he's in the main clique, but like he hasn't even talked this season. He's had like 2 lines. So like,
but that was the same last season. Like they were very big on promoting Josie and Kevin last season, and then they didn't really. I mean, Josie still had that amazing standout episode with "I Feel Love" and that sort of
the whole thing with her father,
family emotion. But she didn't do a lot else apart from that. So I'm hoping we're going to see more Josie. I think we definitely need to see more Josie. I'm glad that she's on the River Vixens. But I don't know.
Yeah, it seems like they're like presenting her opportunities to be more involved.
Yeah.
Yes.
Especially if, you know, your hopes for her and Cheryl's, you know, relationship to, forgive my pun, but blossom a little bit more.
Great pun. I mean, I don't think that, I mean, did you guys kind of hear sort of the teasing about where the storyline was going to go from that they kind of released over the summer?
No, I hadn't. What's up?
Oh. Well, I'm sorry, this is a little bit spoilers, I think, but apparently Reggie and Josie are gonna sort of be some sort of a couple or some sort of a romantic fling, which, like, my heart broke, but that's what Riverdale wants. So I don't know if we're gonna get Cheryl and Josie this season, but we'll always have them rap into each other about being each other's sugar candy girl, so we'll hold on to that.
Yeah, I mean, I could see them developing their relationship into something akin to, like, Betty and Veronica, where it's like, they're, you know, they're not romantically involved, but that, like, there's, like, a very close friendship there that people are, like, obsessed with.
I think it should be, because I feel like they're a good complementary couple in, like, platonically and potentially romantically, in that they both kind of are ambitious and sort of know what they want, and they're kind of more morally ambiguous than sort of like Betty is, for example.
Yeah, and like even Veronica, right, where like she is maybe a little bit less on the side of like, you know, pure virtue, but she's sure trying to get there, you know? Whereas I think both Cheryl and Josie are more interested in acting on their own behalf, which makes them a little bit more interesting because they're wild cards.
They are wild cards, and they're great. Cheryl is like standout character, I think, of the whole season. She's just the whole show, really. She's just been brilliant.
So you know what? That gives me an opportunity here. We're jumping around a little bit from where I wanted to lead the discussion, but that's how these things go. So let's talk about Cheryl. I think Cheryl has she's interesting because while she as a character has shown a lot of growth, at times, I think we're kind of seeing her fall back into old habits this episode, and not necessarily in a way that feels out of character or feels like we're just backpedaling for backpedaling's sake, but you know, we kind of saw her feel a little bit closer to the main gang by the end of season 1. You know, what with Archie saving her life and them, you know, helping her through this really traumatic time. But now that she's kind of back on top, it seems as though she's a little bit more, I don't know, just kind of comfortable being queen bee, like monster girl again. Did you guys get that same feeling?
Yeah, I kind of felt like the whole Cheryl sort of suddenly being like, you know, the queen of the cheerleaders again, that was a little bit of like the plot kind of reset into the status quo a little bit, and being like, it was sort of like a sitcom reset. They'd had this development of sort of Veronica taking over, and then they were like, oh, actually, no, we preferred it with Cheryl in charge of that. And they just kind of I felt quite awkwardly sort of were just like, in 2 sentences, Veronica just relinquished control of the cheerleader. She's just kind of like, I don't really feel like it anymore. And just like, went back to Cheryl.
It did definitely feel abrupt, but it was one of those things where like, I kind of bought it just because like, it didn't ever really seem like Veronica cared about being in charge ever in the first place. She took it over when, you know, Cheryl decided she didn't want to do it anymore. So she's just like, oh, you're taking it back over? Okay. Like...
I mean, I would have liked another, like, dance-off or something. I would have liked them to resolve that a bit more and been like, I'll fight you, I'll dance you for it.
Yeah, like,
but you know what?
Something.
Cheryl as Queen Bee is kind of where Cheryl's best, so I'm quite happy to see where that goes.
Agreed. And while we're, before we move on from just talking about like lovely Cheryl moments and fan service, how great was that moment where she's just like, oh, if you can be a cheerleader, I can be in the Pussycats. Like, let's just do a cover.
Classy Cheryl.
And then they sang the Milkshake song, and it was
amazing.
Every time. Amazing. So
those are good harmonies.
That's what I was thinking.
Rooftop of Pops. That was, I think, all of my general, like, most squee moments were definitely Cheryl related this episode. It was a very good episode for Cheryl. She didn't do a lot, but what she did was, like, really, like, campy and trashy and great.
It very much reminded me of, like, how she was in the last episode, where it's like she's in literally 2 scenes, but they're both just, like, such show-stopping, like, moments that you're just like, God damn, I love Cheryl. Like, she's really grown on me as a character.
See, and I think hopefully by the end of season 2, you'll feel the same way about Alice, and she'll also grow on you like Cheryl.
That's a tall, tall order, my friend.
Tough sell.
So there is like one more Cheryl moment we have to talk about, but we're going to circle back to where it makes sense in my show notes. So let's take the pin out of the Hiram discussion, which we were starting earlier, which is, this is like the first episode we've really spent any time with Hiram. Mm-hmm. And we got a lot of conflicting information about the man. So I've got some notes here I wanted to go through, but Olivia, I heard you gasp. So do you have thoughts on Hiram?
I did have thoughts on Hiram.
Hit us.
And it's that I'm waiting for the kid gloves to come off and for him to show his true, like, mega anime self.
Yes.
His final form.
Yeah, his final form. Yeah, he's still so, like, gentle with Veronica, and I'm just waiting for that moment he's gonna snap and it's gonna be terrifying. And, like, he's got me gripped because he's being too nice and I know he's gonna flip.
Yeah, and we've gotten the foreshadowing that he's really a monster. So I'm with you. I'm interested to see where that goes. And I guess, right, like, that's kind of, we got the tale of 2 Hirams this episode. It's like he's clearly trying to mend fences with his daughter, and he seems sincere, right, in his desire to reconnect with her. But, Veronica's not buying any more of this, like, oh, daddy's got a present and everything's fine. Like, she's, like she said, like, her eyes have been opened and, like, she can't just close them again.
I actually disagree. I don't think he's really trying to mend fences. I think he's trying to get allies. Because that one scene where he was talking to Veronica's mother, it was like, thank you for your loyalty versus like, thank you for like your caring or your loving or just affection in general. It was very, very distant. His relationship with her, I felt.
I can see that.
So yeah, I think more so he's trying to gain an ally out of Veronica and less so a daughter,
or at least make sure she's not an enemy, like neutralize her as a threat.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
He's kind of alienating her as well within the house because he kind of got rid of Smithers now, replacing him with a piece of hot man candy. So you can see where he's plotting.
Oh my God. That made me so upset. Like, I loved Smithers in season 1.
He was my guy.
Yeah, dude. Like, I literally wrote on my first page of notes, I was like, yo, Smithers is the fucking homie. Like, why does he trust Hermione?
But I think Hiram is all anticipation at the moment. He hasn't done anything that interesting. I think Hermione Lodge is sort of, I'm in 2 minds about Hermione Lodge because there was the bit where she took responsibility for the letter. And I was like, now this is really interesting. This is a new shade of bad for Hermione. And then she kind of retracted and it turned out he'd written the letter and they kind of put her back into this sort of Stepford gangster mole kind of character she's sort of taken on, which is really creepy, but there's not that much depth to it if she's just this loyal sort of wife servant.
Yeah, just like doting wife or whatever.
That letter. Yeah. I want to see more of evil Hermione Lodge and her being like equal parts evil to Hiram.
I definitely think we're going to get more of that. That's definitely the impression that I've gotten from how she's been portrayed. So I would imagine that your hopes there will be rewarded.
More evil moms.
But yeah, that I've seen, I thought was a really telling moment, right? Like, how, Veronica has this really great conversation with Jughead about their kind of mutual daddy issues, and she decides to give her parents like a second chance at a fresh start. But, it's not even the end of that scene before we see that they're already lying to her again. You know, that they're withholding information and that like they're never honest with her. You know, like it's just she's so caught up in this web of lies that like she doesn't really know how involved her mother is in all this shit, but like she sure seems guilty and like she trusted her for the longest time and now she doesn't. And, you know, she went to bat for her father so many times and has realized that he really is a monster. So especially now that she's seen that they've gotten rid of Smithers, who was clearly an ally to her and somebody who was willing to speak honestly with her, like where do you think Veronica goes from here? You know, like I feel like peace has been made seemingly, but I don't really think that she's going to buy that everything's hunky-dory.
No, I think that in terms of like where she's going, I feel they're going to string her along up until like a breaking point. And once that breaking point hits, it's going to be Veronica against Hiram and Hermione.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's going to be so interesting because where does that leave her? You know, like she's still a kid. And regardless of being morally correct, Hermione's right that like she's still a part of this family, whether she likes it or not. And on some level, she's going to have to step in line unless she can keep up appearances and the air that things are fine.
I think Veronica's got interesting places to go to. I don't think this was the best Veronica episode we've ever had in terms of, like, she didn't really do a whole lot this episode. It was kind of, I think there were so many different things on the go that Veronica kind of got, like, sort of the less character development of, like, apart from, like, you know, obviously Kevin, who didn't even get a line.
Yeah, right, of, like, the main characters who actually did things this episode.
Yeah, I think with her, it's kind of like she's tied up with Hiram, and I think it's kind of like anticipatory again that I'm waiting to see what Veronica's going to get up to.
Yeah.
I expect great things. But how creepy was it when Hiram showed up with like the yellow flowers for friendship and the cupcakes to win her over? And like, that's exactly what she used to win over Betty in season 1, episode 2.
Yeah.
That little callback.
Yeah, dude.
And I love that shade of like seeing bits of Hiram in Veronica and that sort of like, where does she learn everything from? We're probably going to get a scene soon where like Hermione's washing blood off in the shower and Hiram comes in like with a pearl necklace.
And we see his beautifully sculpted stomach.
I was going to say, there's also like another sort of meta Riverdale fandom callback where sort of, is it Betty and Kevin see Hiram for the first time? They both go daddy, which obviously is like such a big part of the Riverdale. Like they're always arguing over who's the daddy of the group. And I was like, oh, I get where you're going, but no.
Yeah, that was a little cringy, but I have to say like just the level of meta Easter egg moments that they sneak into this show is just so great. Like, and I have to say, Olivia, like, I'm just gonna, usually I say this till the end of the episode, but you're fucking killing it. Like, you're calling out this stuff left and right. It's awesome. I love it.
Like, I mean, I kind of love the little Easter eggs. I'm sure you guys know that the guy's name is Black Hood. Just in case you guys haven't brought this up yet.
Oh, we're talking about that later. Okay. Yeah, put a pin in that one.
That's also like an awesome
don't worry about it.
Reference in the Arch universe as well. So yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, don't worry about it. That's cool. That's a teaser for later. We're coming up on it once we get through the rest of the stuff about the main characters. So yeah, that'll take us into to Jughead, who definitely, you know, got some complicated family dynamics of his own going on. We had a lot of development of his plot this episode, but I think similar to Veronica's, it felt like not much development for the character, but more for like the situation that he's been finding himself in this season. It feels like a lot of kind of, like you said, anticipatory kind of like track laying right now, you know? But we learned a lot about what's going on with his father, FP's trial. So, you know, once we learned that FP's facing anywhere from 20 to 40 years in prison, Jughead kind of spends most of his time this episode, like, looking for a way out, you know? Like we said, he goes and accosts Mayor McCoy. He tries to convince the Serpents to help him break him out of jail before he's finally connected with Penny Peabody, who is a lawyer and a member of the Serpents. And, you know, she comes up with the admittedly brilliant idea of trying to, like, kind of leverage the Blossoms to publicly forgive FP and, you know, hopefully get him time served in good behavior instead of such a massive sentence. So I do want to talk about that dynamic with Cheryl in a minute, but like, what do we think about what's going on with Penny here? You know, this is clearly another favor that he now owes to a serpent or the serpents, that, you know, lands him deeper into this world that, you know, it doesn't really seem like he wants to be a part of. Whether or not, you know, he likes, you know, we talked about it last week about how feeling close to the serpents makes him feel close to his dad, but I don't think he really sees himself as one of them. But, you know, FP seems like really concerned that Jughead owes her something now. So, like, what's your read on this character?
Well, she's played by the same actress who's Livewire in Supergirl. So he should just know from like his sort of television knowledge, she's bad news. Like Courtney Love as a lawyer. Like, that's not gonna be good. I really loved her. Does anybody know she's an actual Archie Comics character in any way? Because sometimes these are like sort of Easter egg characters, but I'm not familiar with a Penny Peabody in Archie.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, to my knowledge, no.
Yeah, I wanted to look some stuff up about her beforehand, but I didn't get a chance to. With a name like Penny Peabody, I would imagine
She's gotta be.
You'd think, right?
Yeah, I would. Marco, you want to look that up real quick?
Yeah, I'm looking right now.
Cool. Yeah, so like it definitely seems like she, like, you know, she's a little more sinister than she appears, right? Like the way that she asked for that, oh, we're friends, you know, like I did you a favor, maybe someday you do me a favor. It's like, Jughead, have you not watched any crime movies? No. Give her some money.
Like, don't trust a lawyer who set up shop in a tattoo parlor. Like, that's just like, it's so beautifully naff, that whole like section. But I think that she's kind of a great character. The second she showed up, I was like, this is going to be absolutely awesome. Because I think what you're kind of saying, like, Jughead's got this sort of Southside Serpent destiny he's kind of going on. But the difference between him and Betty is that he'll say, oh, we should abduct these people as a joke. And Betty will be the person who'll actually go and do that.
Yeah, like, that's a great point. He's like, oh yeah, blackmail and extortion, but they're a widow and an orphan, so I wouldn't do that. And Betty's like, well, I'll do it.
Betty's like, hold my drink.
So Penny has a very, very minor role in one of the Archie comics. She appeared in the Little Archie series, which is like even younger than what Archie is in the normal comics. And she's apparently the girlfriend of bully Fangs Fogarty.
Okay.
Skill, I like it.
Yeah. So
that's like such a deep cut for no reason.
Yeah, right?
All right.
It's like the 31st issue of The Adventures of Little Archie.
And she's in that one story and that's it?
Wow.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Okay. That's weird.
That's
crazy.
beautiful.
Yeah, so
it's a crazy pull.
Yeah, I mean, not too much to go on here, but I mean, I think that's obviously going to play into the developing plot we have with Jughead and him getting in over his head in regard to the serpents. So more on that in the weeks to come, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I think I had one other note for Jughead because I'm really sorry. I can't stand Cole Sprouse and I can't stand Jughead. I'm so sorry. You're going to kick me off the podcast.
What? Olivia, you, oh my
man.
God, you like Alice and you hate Jughead?
I'm like,
What is wrong with you?
Is Olivia the monster?
Who hurt you?
I am the gentrification antichrist.
She is the Whole Foods.
So I've got
Olivia Whole
two
Foods
notes
Hicks.
for Jughead.
That's your new nickname.
One of which is I hate Jughead, and the other one is why would you just sneak in the back of Archie's house like that? Like, I was kind of quite taken by that moment where Archie was like so jumpy, and obviously his dad's just been shot, and Jughead still sneaks in to the back of the house, and you're just like, of course you're gonna get hit. And then he acts like Archie's weird for trying to hit him. I'm like, I would hit you.
Well, I think that is actually a good opportunity for us to move on to talk about Archie. But I don't know, like, I buy that. You know, it's like if you've been best friends with someone since you were like children, like, you don't usually like necessarily knock on the door to go into their house, you know?
I feel like middle of the night and his dad's just been shot, you should maybe consider reevaluating your formula.
Yeah, I'll give you that one. Actually, you know what? Before we get into Archie, I wanted to use that opportunity to give my final thoughts on the Cheryl moment we skipped earlier, and then some of the other minor character stuff. So in relation, like, think about Cheryl's testimony on FP's behalf. I thought that was That was one of the juicier Cheryl moments we've been treated to, I think.
That's going to come back to bite them.
You think so?
I think so. Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It's like, you don't, she's one of those characters you don't just like owe a favor to, same as like Penny, I would imagine. You know, she is cunning and devious, and knows how to play a crowd. And we saw that in her testimony. So I think that it's, one, it was getting that recording back, and two, leverage.
Yeah. I mean, she was definitely forced to do it, right?
Right.
I think it's interesting because I think you could read it that way, right? Like that, because she lied, right? She went that extra mile to lie to get FP out of it. And you can either look at that as one of Cheryl's rare moments of being a decent person, or, like you said, to get leverage over them in the future next time she needs something from them, which I wouldn't put that past her. She's that kind of person.
Yeah, but also, like, this is a show moment we didn't actually talk about, that what she wanted to do with the tape was force her burn victim mother to watch her son being shot. And there was never a reaction shot for that. We didn't ever see Mama Blossom react to that, like, moment of, like, arch-villain evilness from Cheryl.
Yeah, I didn't know how I was supposed to read that because of that. You know, because we didn't...
That was a...
Go ahead.
That was a power move.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
It was her flexing muscle emotionally for her mother.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. I mean, right? Like, we got that speech from her last episode where she was literally... you know, choking her mother. And, you know, she's clearly on top now in this power dynamic, which, considering how much her mother pushed her around and everything in season 1, I can't say I'm surprised that she's acting this way.
Yeah, it's also, it reminds me of the first season where, what is it? Oh my God, I forgot his name. Her father.
Oh, I actually don't remember either. Whatever, Mr. Blossom.
Yeah, Papa Blossom.
Yeah, Papa Blossom, where he mentions, you know, you should have been the one leading the blossoms, not the son, because she's willing to go take those extra steps. She's willing to cross the line, you know. So I think it's just similar to what we saw with getting hints of their parents with Veronica. This is a hint that this is her father. You know, this is her father's daughter.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think also I'm still salty about the fact that the father was prepared to literally give over the Blossom fortune to Archie just because he had red hair and couldn't see that Cheryl was like a capable businesswoman. And like, I feel like there's like a bit of like short-sightedness on the Blossoms business-wise, which hopefully Cheryl doesn't have, and she will have foresight and be able to get this stuff. But you never know.
Yeah, I think her father's biggest problem was that he looked at her being unhinged as a weakness, when really it's her biggest strength, that she's crazy.
Yes. Yes, kind of like Alice, my bae, who like, you know, you never know what she's gonna do, Olivia. And she has zero like limits because she cray.
You're killing me. All right, so I did have one last thing I wanted to touch on before we get into all of this stuff around Archie this episode, which I never thought Archie would be the thing I was most excited to talk about on Riverdale. But so we got a little nod to a new character, maybe, and what I think is going to be at least somewhat of a developing plot this season, which was we got the first appearance of Midge Klump, who is a character from the comics, right?
Yes. No, she's quite a major character in the comics, I would say.
Do you want to talk about her a little bit real quick? Because this is another thing I didn't get a chance to look up before the show. So what's the deal with Midge?
Oh, Midge is like, basically, she's Moose's girlfriend, but Reggie is sort of like kind of in love with her a little bit. And so Reggie and Moose always kind of fight over Midge. She's quite headstrong. She's common sense. She's like the one person who's not over their head over heels and with Archie, because she loves Moose, who's like this big lug. So she's actually a really kind of strong kind of side character. And I think also sometimes in the comics when they can't characterize Betty and Veronica's friendship very well, Midge then kind of steps up and kind of becomes the friend and the sounding board for Betty. I think we saw that in the new sort of Poison Ivy, Harley Quinn, Betty and Veronica sort of mini-series, issue 1, Midge was kind of there as the main friend for Betty because they were kind of too busy setting up Veronica as an antagonist.
Okay.
So she's a really strong, like, she's not like, you know, I mean, I think she's more prevalent in the comics than Kevin. Like, she's a far more present character.
She's utilized a lot more.
At least in the modern stuff, right? Like, are you talking about New Riverdale or?
No, I'm talking like just across the board in the comics.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in the newer stuff, she doesn't really pop up as much, or even Kevin for that matter.
Yeah, Kevin really hasn't been that present. He's sort of in the Mark Waid stuff, he's kind of showing up a bit.
Here and there, yeah.
But yeah, no, it was exciting to finally get Midge, because they mentioned her in like episode 2 of season 1, or episode 2 of season 1. They sort of half-heartedly mentioned that she was there and she was Moose's girlfriend, and we never saw her. And then like we saw her and I was so happy Midge had finally shown up. Yeah,
I had the same reaction. I'm a big fan of those two characters. So yeah, to see them like there and be like, oh my god, it's Midge, and it's like, yeah, I'm just gonna go talk to Moose later. It's like, I was like, oh my god, it's happening. I'm a big fan of them. They're one of my biggest ships.
Oh, they are. Like, Midge and Moose is like totally a ship. If you don't ship them, you're a monster. Like,
yeah, you're a true monster.
Yeah, even truer than someone who doesn't like Jughead, a Midge and Moose non-shipper. My notes for Midge was Midge, ! And then Ag, the bass, because as she kind of appeared for the first time, there was this really good, like, sort of bass line as she kind of walked in, and it was brilliant. She just, even the actress was perfect. The haircut was perfect. She was like a little bit of a bad girl.
Yes, the haircut.
The haircut, the relationship, the way she was talking to Reggie, and you could tell he was into her, but she was kind of like, nah, I'm with Moose. And it was just really, she was just so perfect. Kudos to the actress. I don't know what her name is. I haven't stalked her yet, but she was brilliant.
Yeah, we'll be talking a little bit more about Midge in a few minutes, but yeah, hopefully we get some more about her in the episodes to come. So the other thing I wanted to ask about was what did you guys think about all the talk about Jingle Jangle? I think we got a nod to that last episode. It's clearly some kind of drug that gets put in pixie sticks or whatever. So is that a thing in Archie comics?
I've never heard of Jingle Jangle. What it reminded me of was Giggle Pig from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, is it called? The sort of stupid drug in Brooklyn Nine-Nine to hunt him down. Like, do you got any Jingle Jangle?
Yeah, that's fucking hilarious. Yes, I don't know about that, but the fact that we've heard about it twice now leads me to think it's probably going to come up again, so something to think about.
I think Reggie's going to get into trouble for it, would be my sort of prediction. I guess Reggie kind of fits the sort of sleazy drug dealer type. I don't know how you guys feel about this. The new actor for Reggie is great, but I'm still so heartbroken because Ross Butler was just the best looking, most gorgeous man on the show, in my opinion. I'm just so sad he's gone, but the new Reggie's good too.
Yeah, he's fine. I always think stuff like that's a little bit weird, but like when it's a minor character like Reggie who's like maybe been on screen 2 or 3 times, like that were memorable, it's like, it's not the worst thing in the world, you know?
Yeah. I think because he wasn't in season 1 too much, they kind of got away with it. It's great that we're actually getting Reggie properly in this season, that we are starting to get Reggie appearing and doing stuff, and him and Archie have really good sort of, I don't know what they're frenemies, so they've got really good frenemy chemistry going on. He's a drug dealer. Oh, it's beautiful.
So before we get into our closing thoughts, I did just want to talk a little bit about our main man, Archie. So like we talked about last week, I think there seems to be a decided effort to focus more on Archie this season. Maybe it's just because he actually has an interesting, like, long-term story to deal with right now. But there was a lot going on for him this episode. I mean, he's still dealing with the fallout of, you know, last episode. I mean, he's not sleeping. He's constantly on guard. You know, he's obviously becoming very paranoid. He's thinking about taking drugs and you know, just really a lot of things that are pretty out of character for him. So it seems like he's really in a rough place psychologically, even at the beginning of this episode, and it really only gets worse when he finds out the truth about what happened in Grundy. You know, obviously that's going to be emotional for him because they were involved and had a relationship, but I think it only furthers his fears that somebody is out to get him and the people that are close to him as well. So what did you guys think about kind of where Archie's at right now and how they've been dealing with him this season so far.
I mean, I feel like he's still kind of, the plot happens around Archie, and obviously I have my favorite characters who I tend to focus on more in my notes, but I have so few notes about Archie's development this kind of episode. I think what I kind of did love, and I feel really bad, this is me just being an awful human, the fact that Grundy got killed with the cello bow, I was like, that's beautiful.
It was like, I love that too. Is like, when I realized that was, because, I remember her getting choked with the cello bow, but I kind of forgot about the gift or whatever. So like, when they had that moment of him realizing like, oh, she was choked with the cello bow, I was like, oh, that's so traumatizing. Like...
Oh, poor Archie. He's just never going to make it through okay. But I think, definitely Archie sort of being like jingle jangle, like looking at the jingle jangle, that's not something that we'd really ever associate with Archie, even in the Riverdale universe, of him being like interested and tempted by drugs.
Yeah, right. Like, he's always presented as like a very straight-laced kind of kid.
Yeah, and I think the way they dealt with sort of post-traumatic stress with Archie was actually really great this episode. There was like the amazing bit of direction where he goes into the Pop's diner and the roller skates through the pool of blood.
Yeah, that was a great moment.
Was really so cool. Like, it was like so well done. And that was like such a brilliant like moment.
Yeah, I think watching him deal with this trauma, with that PTSD, as it were, has been a really, really fun development this season, so far anyway. And it's funny, actually, I have in my notes, my girlfriend came in about halfway through the episode. She watches the show, but had not seen this episode yet. And she was just like, oh my God, PTSD Archie this season is just like, it's really heartbreaking.
He hasn't been shaven either. He's looking very disheveled, and I feel bad for him. He just looks
ragged, like he's really out of it.
I feel like I'm not sure how much longer him and Veronica are gonna be, because I mean, like, he kind of does need. I like that she was able to be like, you need to go and talk to the school counselor, and you need to sort of maybe start talking to somebody about this. Because I think all Veronica can really offer is sexy shower time, which is maybe not always what he needs psychologically.
Yeah.
She's reached the limits of her therapy. But he didn't get it. He didn't get the help he needed. So I don't know. This is good.
Yeah, right. Instead, it's like he decides he's going to like lean into drugs or something, which is obviously not the right call. And I think, yeah, you're right. Like, that's one of the things that's been fun, I think, to watch Veronica grow as a character is, like she said, right? She's not great at being there for people emotionally. She doesn't have a lot of experience of really being vulnerable with someone and letting people be vulnerable to her. So I think like that is going to be a consistent problem for them moving forward, but we are seeing her grow and adapt in the way she's trying to deal with what Archie's going through. And yeah, I mean, we saw her fall back into the old habit of sexy shower time, but I think her admittedly leaning on Betty to realize what's happening with Archie and push him to get help is a good step for her as a character, whether or not it ends up making an impact on Archie.
Definitely. Also, just to go back to Miss Grundy's sort of death, I don't know if you're going to be bringing this up at the end. Like, Alice lied in the morgue.
When she said she didn't know her, yeah.
She said she didn't know her. Does this mean that Alice is somehow connected to all of the murders that are happening?
I wouldn't be surprised, because that's what I thought last time, and it was true. I mean, like, she was definitely more wrapped up in it than we were led to believe. So I mean, like, I wouldn't be surprised. I can't imagine what her reason for trying to kill Fred would be.
You know what it is? I bet she's still salty that Archie made Betty cry in episode 1, and this is her very long,
super long con. I have a thing I want to touch on about Alice, but before we get away from it, Reggie and the drugs, right? So, Reggie tries, given the context, if you think Jughead showing up at the back door is bad, what he does, that's
yeah, but Reggie's you expect Reggie to do stupid stuff like that. Jughead's supposed to not do stupid stuff like that. But yeah, I think Reggie not only did something so immature and so typically Reggie and just, he's such a douche. But then even Reggie was like to Archie, I don't think you should be having more drugs. And when your drug dealer is telling you need to stop doing drugs,
that's a sign.
Before you even begun.
Right. Yeah, and I have to say, that was the thing I actually really liked that moment for Reggie. Trying to be his friend a little bit more. this episode. And, you know, granted, I mean, he's still trying to give him drugs in a time where he doesn't need drugs. But I think when he realizes the severity of where Archie's at, like, he does try to talk some sense into him. And it's like, look, man, like, you can't attack a guy with a gun with a baseball bat. Which ultimately leads Archie down a not so great road where he buys a gun from Dilton Daly, which I was not surprised by. I called that as soon as Reggie said that shit. I was like, oh, great. Obviously, Archie is going down a pretty difficult path here, you know, and I think that there's the potential for a lot of more hard times ahead for him. So what do you guys think about that? Like, what do you think is going to be the breaking point for Archie where he really finally deals with this trauma?
Like episode 21.
Calling it there. That's it. Done. That's it. That's what we're calling it.
Yep. So you go, Marco. You had something more important to say.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, I think he's gonna get to the point where he's gonna be the one to hurt someone he loves. Like that irony is gonna hit him. And I think I could see that he's gonna devolve to that point where he isn't as mentally stable, and he's gonna snap and he's gonna hurt somebody.
Do you think he's gonna push Veronica away and he'll lose Veronica, and that'll be like the real sort of low of the low of the low of the low?
Yeah, we're gonna break that ship. We're gonna sink it.
Yeah, it's gonna have to happen. I think that's probably true. So one last thing to touch on about this murder is so we had what I thought was a great line from Alice, which is probably the best one of the episode, which one of the most self-aware lines I've ever heard in television. My, we've come a long way since dances at the gym and varsity football tryouts, haven't we?
Yes.
It's like, we sure have, Alice.
This ain't varsity tryouts anymore. Oh, goodness, that was such a good line. Because it not only works within the context of, like, you know, this sort of constant, there's no longer the 50s, Riverdale is changing. It just so meta, the whole sort of
very much
throwback.
So.
And also because all Archie kind of worried about for quite a long period of that sort of first season was whether he was more into football or music.
Right.
And now he's got real issues to deal with, and it's quite interesting.
Yeah, things got very real for him. So from you know, Alice's connections, we learned some things about Grundy's murder. We learned that there's no forced entry, that she likely knew the killer. That's one of the things they say, right? So we rule out her ex-husband. So I'm kind of left here thinking, so what the fuck? What's going on there? And then the fact that we also at the end get the seeming murder anyway, of Midge and Moose. You know, I gotta ask you, like, who do we think is the killer here? You know, it seems like, you know, like we said, it seems like maybe Alice has a connection. You know, there's been the drops that maybe it's a connection to the lodges, but, you know, we don't really seem to have a good idea of what's going on. And something that Olivia teased earlier is there seems to be a little deep cut about this killer, which I'm gonna read this article real quick for you guys, just an excerpt from it from CBR, which is, has an Archie superhero character arrived in Riverdale? So this came out after chapter 14, and I'm just going to read it for you. So it says, the Riverdale gang may have just gotten a visit from an Archie comics character called the Black Hood. In chapter 14, A Kiss Before Dying, the season 2 premiere, Archie's father, Fred Andrews, was rushed to the hospital after da-da-da-da-da. We know all this, right? So this is a man who's constantly referred to as the Black Hood. But does that mean he's the Black Hood? And who exactly is the Black Hood? In February 2015, Archie Comics launched a new imprint called Dark Circle Comics, which reimagined the publisher's decades-old non-Archie characters. The imprint's first title was Black Hood, written by Dwayne Swierczynski, with art by Michael Gaydos. So the series recast the Black Hood, who was like a Golden Age hero, as Greg Hedinger, who is a former police officer from Philly who gets shot in the face after taking on the original Black Hood, Thomas Kip Burland, who then takes the mask and basically takes over the role as the Black Hood, and taking on a crime lord, all that kind of typical vigilante superhero stuff. So over the course of the episode, right, Archie is questioned about the shooting and has, which, you know, we'll link to down below, that you guys can check it out for yourself. I mean, it looks exactly like this character. So what do you think's going on here? Who is this killer? Who is Black Hood?
Oh, no, I haven't read the Dark Circle stuff. I wish I kind of had picked it up in such an intelligent way as CBR did. I picked it up when the Instagram hashtag was hashtag Black Hood, and I was like, oh, that's a superhero, right? But I don't know the character, so I don't know anything really about Black Hood other than he was a character they revamped and he's an old Archie superhero. So I don't have any extra sort of deets to give you guys on that one.
All right, well, I mean, it's something to check out. I mean, it's definitely something to keep your eyes open for. It doesn't really seem like we have much more to go on beyond that connection. But, you know, at this point, I feel like I'm going to ask this question every week until we get an idea. But I have no fucking idea. I have no idea who this murderer is.
I'm going to be disappointed if it's like some random person. You know, I really hope they don't do that. But at this point, either they've done such a good job of throwing the entire populace watching this show, or it's like some rando character.
I mean, I gotta say, the shooting of Midge and Moose has really thrown me because it kind of suggests two completely different storylines, but also, okay, so the first two killings were kind of very much connected to Archie, and you could see that I didn't think Archie was necessarily wrong when he was saying it's somehow connected to me. That final shooting, though, of Midge and Moose was kind of reminded me there's like an American serial killer who kind of started off by shooting teen couples. It kind of really reminded me of that sort of real life killer, and it kind of was bringing back to what I'm going to say his name and I hate him, Cole Sprouse. Sorry, Cole.
Stop.
Talking about. He was right. He was right on this occasion. Cole Sprouse was talking about it being more of a horror this time, and I think Midge and Moose follow the typical horror teen death trope of they're into sex and they're into drugs, so they're gonna get killed first. And I think that's exactly what they're setting up. And also Jughead mentions Nightmare on Elm Street 3 or something. I think that but that's like a completely different sort of slasher sort of, and in slasher movies, it kind of doesn't really ever make that much sense why someone's getting killed.
Yeah, sometimes it's just random, right?
So it's kind of thrown me. Sorry, I'm rambling, but it's kind of thrown me a little bit because this seems so unconnected to anything else that we've seen and any of the other killings that it only at this stage with this amount of information, it only makes sense that he is just a rando killer, which we don't want.
Yeah, and I think you're right because, yeah, you're right? Until that killing, it all does seem directly connected to Archie. It seems like someone is out to get Archie. And the fact that we have this other seemingly random killing, it kind of throws a wrench in that theory. And it's interesting to me to see that, like, he shoots Mr. Andrews, he shoots Midge and Moose, but he strangles Mrs. Grundy, and they make a point of saying that this was like a very personal crime. So does that mean anything? Is that an outlier for some reason? Like, it just raises more questions, right? And
yeah, there are two killers, maybe.
Maybe, yeah, maybe it's copycat. Like, who the fuck knows? Maybe
Miss Grundy's a copycat killer because she seems the only one that's got like a personal. I mean, like Fred Andrews is kind of personal, but that one seemed more connected to Hiram. Now, why would Hiram be shooting Miss Grundy?
Or these kids?
Why would Hiram be shooting Moose and Midge?
And I think that throws the whole is Alice involved thing into question too, because why would she kill two random kids?
I mean, other than just she's kind of evil and she might just do it for fun, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, like it doesn't track with her character, her motivations. Do you think, just one last question about Moose, since you guys are both fans of Moose, what do you think's his deal sexually? Because wasn't the whole thing he was fooling around with Kevin in the first season? Do you think he's bi, or is he like just with Midge to have a beard?
I think his deal is the Riverdale writers revising things between the first episode and the episode. I think he's sort of supposed to be bi, isn't he? Or like closeted. I think that's how I would read the character. But I love Moose and Midge as a couple.
Yeah, I definitely read him as being closeted in the first season, and that's why I don't know if like his relationship with Midge is sincere or if, you know, he's just like keeping up appearances.
That's maybe why he needs the jingle jangle, because it's kind of like a Viagra as well, right? So maybe he needs that to kind of so he can get it on with Midge because he's not attracted to her.
Totally possible.
Which he should be, because Midge is great, but like maybe in this universe he's like, I need the jingle jangle.
Yeah, he's more a fan of the Coos ship, as it were.
Maybe he'll wake up in hospital and Kevin will be at his bedside and there'll be like this grand reunion.
That would be fucking adorable. Isn't there a nice gay kid at your school you could take out? Yeah, Dad. Me.
Oh, I love that sort of Kevin Keller and his dad relationship so much. Because I totally thought at that stage, early days of Riverdale, they were going to just play it straight, and that was such a innuendo. But I thought they were going to just play it the normal way, and Chef Keller would be like, "Oh, no son of mine's going to be going out with other guys." But I like that they were just like, "No, he like totally is cool. He just wants Kevin to get a nice boyfriend," which we all want.
Yeah, like I loved like that. It was a very like. That's the kind of portrayal I think we need to see more of with gay characters, where it's just not a thing. Like it's not, like we don't need to necessarily have that conversation every time, right? Like you would assume that the small town, southern Midwest, wherever it is, sheriff, man's man, dad would like have a problem with it. But I love that it's more that he's just like, can you just like go on a date already? Like go find somebody and have sex. Like, I don't care that it's gay sex as long as you're having sex, son.
Apparently, Cheryl, in the words of Madeline Petch, the actress, is going to have an unexpected love interest this season.
Ooh.
So I have two predictions for that. One way it's going to be is it's going to be a lady of some description. Maybe Tony Topaz. Maybe we'll get Chirozi and Josie. But my one prediction is going to be a lady. The second prediction is what I hope it don't go and be, because who else would be an unexpected love interest for Cheryl but Hiram Lodge? That's my second prediction.
What the fuck? Oh my god, Olivia, that's crazy.
Riverdale like encourages crazy theories and conspiracy theories, though, and that's my one for Cheryl's love interest.
I mean, they've also showed us that like inappropriate relationships between adults and children are not off the table. So
yeah, I think that's what we kind of all want. We kind of want Riverdale to push it as far as they can go without it teetering over. Because I think you were right last week. You said it's like a fine line the show is trying to walk, and that is totally ridiculous. But it's so serious, and that's what makes it truly genius. And I always want it to push it so far in the ridiculous that they can, as far in the ridiculous as they can possibly get. Like, last season, I thought we were going to have like a Vertigo thing with like, Cheryl was going to sort of dress Betty up as Polly and then become Jade. I thought all sorts of crazy was going to go down. And so I'm kind of hoping more crazy is going to happen this season.
Well, we're definitely looking forward to it either way. So make sure you guys keep tuning in to hear our thoughts on every episode as they come, and what more craziness there is for Riverdale to have for us. So that's gonna, I think, wrap up the discussion here for season 2, episode 2, chapter 15 of the Riverdale review. If you guys want to let us know your thoughts on the episode, again, you can hit us up at thecomicspals@gmail.com. You can follow the Comics Pals or at the Comics Pals, wherever your social media is sold, or you can just hit us, down in the comments below. And we would greatly appreciate it if you guys would like the show on your platform of choice. Bounce over to iTunes and give us a rating. Subscribe on YouTube. Share with your friends. All that stuff. And we'll see you guys next week. Thank you again so much, Olivia, for joining us.
Oh, it's no worries. Thank you for having me.
Oh, anytime. You're welcome back anytime. Despite your disdain for the best character on the show, you're always welcome on this podcast. We had a great time with you.
Thank you so much.
So just real quick, can you tell the pals at home where they can find you if they want to connect with you on social media or follow your work?
Yeah, of course. I've got a Twitter, which is at Miss Olivia Hicks, which is sort of more academic and boring. But I also have a Instagram, which is just kind of fan art, mostly of Riverdale this time of year. And that's at Lasso Magica Rescate, RESCARTE on Rescate. And don't ask why I have that username. I do.
All right, we'll leave it at that. And again, if you want to connect with me and Marco, you can get our Twitter handles in the description down below. We'll see you guys next week. Take it easy.
Bye.
Oh, check please. Pop, check please.